For centuries, hidden archives, forbidden knowledge, and untold events have been kept out of sight. Behind closed doors lie secrets powerful enough to rewrite what we think we know. If you skip this, you'll never uncover what's truly been buried in history. So watch till the very end. And don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more mysteries the world isn't ready to reveal. Let's begin. The Vatican secret archives beneath the heart of Vatican City lies a place rarely seen by the outside world, a labyrinth of halls and vaults known as the Vatican Secret Archives. For centuries, this hidden collection has stirred curiosity, speculation, and countless theories about what lies within its walls. The archives, officially established in the 17th century, contain an estimated 85 kilometers of shelving lined with manuscripts, letters, and documents spanning over 1,000 years of history. Here are papal decrees, royal correspondences, and records of pivotal events that shaped nations. The archives preserve letters from monarchs and scientists, treaties that ended wars, even personal notes exchanged between powerful rulers and the popes of their time. Yet, what makes the collection so intriguing is not only what we know is inside, but what remains unseen. Access is highly restricted. Scholars may request specific documents for study, but the vast majority of the material remains untouched, locked away in silence. The sense of secrecy has fueled questions. What could be hidden? Are there records of lost gospels, evidence of early church controversies, or details about unexplained historical events? Among the most discussed are files relating to the trial of Galileo, reports from missionaries describing distant civilizations, and correspondences about political alliances that altered the course of history. Still, for every known item, countless others remain a mystery. Walking through these vaulted chambers is like stepping into a frozen river of history, where time has been captured on fragile parchment and carefully guarded behind thick doors. Only fragments of this immense collection have seen the light of day, leaving the rest to speculation and imagination. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not a single document, but the enduring silence itself, the decision of what may be revealed and what must forever remain hidden. As long as the Vatican Secret Archive stands sealed to the world, the question lingers: what stories still lie in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? The third secret of Fatima. In 1917, in the small Portuguese village of Fatima, 3 shepherd children claimed to receive visions of the Virgin Mary. Among the messages given to them was something that would later be known as the Third Secret, a Fatima mysterious revelation that has fueled speculation, debate, and secrecy for more than a century. The first 2 secrets revealed by the children spoke of visions of hell, prophecies of world wars, and the rise of communism. But the third secret, written down by Sister Lucia, the last surviving visionary, was sealed in an envelope and delivered to the Vatican with instructions that it should not be revealed until 1960. The reasoning was that the world would better understand its meaning by then. Yet when 1960 came, the Vatican declined to publish it, stating only that the contents were not for our time. This decision ignited decades of speculation. Some believe the secret foretold the end of the world, others suggested it contained dire warnings about the Church itself. In the year 2000, the Vatican finally released what it claimed was the full text. A symbolic vision of a bishop in white interpreted as the Pope being attacked and killed, followed by the suffering of other believers. Vatican officials explained that this vision was fulfilled in the assassination, his attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981. Still, many were not convinced. Critics argued that what was published lacked the apocalyptic tone that early accounts had hinted. Others suggested that portions of the text were withheld, possibly containing references to corruption or crises within the Church. Even Sister Lucia's own statements at times seemed to suggest that the full weight of the message had not been disclosed. To this day, the question lingers: was the world told everything about the third secret of Fatima, or does the Vatican still guard a revelation too unsettling to share? And so, the mystery endures, resting somewhere between faith, secrecy, and the unknown. The Lost Gospel of Judas. The story of the Gospel of Judas begins in the sands of Egypt, where a mysterious manuscript emerged from obscurity. Unlike the familiar texts of the New Testament, its fragile papyrus carried words that would challenge long-held beliefs and ignite debate among historians, theologians, and believers alike. Dating back to the 3rd or 4th century, the manuscript was discovered in the 1970s, written in Coptic, an ancient Egyptian language. It was not preserved in the grand halls of a church or library, but hidden, decaying in a cave. For decades, it passed through the hands of collectors, suffering neglect and damage, until scholars finally began the painstaking process of restoring and translating it. What they uncovered was extraordinary. In this text, Judas Iscariot, the disciple, infamous for betraying Jesus, was not portrayed as a traitor. Instead, he was depicted as a trusted confidant, chosen by Jesus to fulfill a divine mission. According to the Gospel, Judas's role was not one of betrayal, but of obedience. Carrying out the will of Christ in a way the other disciples could not understand, the words offered a strikingly different perspective, aligning with traditions linked to Gnosticism, a branch of early Christianity often suppressed and condemned as heretical. For the Gnostics, salvation came through secret knowledge, and the Gospel of Judas reflects that theme, painting Judas as the one who received and acted upon hidden truth. Yet the text raises more questions than it answers. Why was this gospel buried? Who sought to preserve it, and what did it mean for the communities that once read it in secret? Scholars remain divided. Some see it as a historical window into competing early Christian beliefs, while others regard it as symbolic storytelling, never meant to rewrite history. Today, the Gospel of Judas stands as both artifact and enigma. It challenges us to reconsider how stories are told, preserved, and silenced. And while fragments of its papyrus may be fragile, the questions it poses endure, inviting us to wonder what other forgotten voices might still lie hidden, waiting to be heard. The Dead Sea Scrolls suppression theories, the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls remains one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds of the 20th century. Hidden for nearly 2,000 years in the caves near Qumran, these ancient manuscripts reshaped our understanding of early Judaism and the world in which Christianity emerged. Yet their story is not only about revelation, but also about silence, secrecy, and suspicion. From 1947 onward, fragments of scrolls were uncovered texts, ranging from biblical passages to community rules and apocalyptic visions. Scholars quickly realized their importance, but as the scrolls were studied, an unusual pattern emerged. For decades, access to many of these manuscripts was restricted to a small circle of experts. Independent researchers eager to examine the material were consistently denied entry. This secrecy gave rise to theories of suppression. Some suggested the Vatican sought to control access, fearing that the texts might challenge traditional religious teachings. Others believed the scrolls contained details that could rewrite accepted narratives about Jesus, early Christianity, or even political power structures of the ancient world. Over the years, fragments were quietly released, sometimes in incomplete or edited form. It wasn't until the 1990s that wider publication began, thanks in part to mounting public pressure and unauthorized photographs. By then, however, the air of mystery had already taken hold. Why, many wondered, would such documents be hidden for so long? Were they simply too fragile to shore, too dangerous? Today, much of the scrolls are accessible. Scholars argue that their content is consistent with other ancient Jewish writings. But questions linger. Did the decades of restriction conceal something more than caution, or certain interpretations, deliberately delayed to preserve established beliefs? The Dead Sea Scrolls still whisper across centuries, not only through their ancient words, but through the shadows of secrecy that once surrounded them. And perhaps hidden within the fragments we cannot yet fully piece together lies the answer to why silence lasted longer than discovery. The missing Vatican gold during WWIIN, the chaos of World War II. Stories of lost treasures echo across Europe. but few are as enigmatic as the mystery of the missing Vatican gold. Historical records confirm that during the early 1940s, the Vatican held significant reserves of gold, safeguarded within its vast treasury. As the war intensified and the Axis powers swept across the continent, fears grew that the Vatican itself might be drawn into the conflict. To protect its wealth, reports suggest that portions of this gold were quietly moved for safekeeping. 1. Shipment, documented in 1943, reportedly contained more than 100 kilograms of gold destined for a secure location in Rome. But somewhere along the route, the trail vanished. No official records explain what happened next. Eyewitness testimonies collected after the war describe armed convoys and secretive movements under the cover of night, yet none of these accounts align with the official Vatican archives. Some historians argue that the gold was seized by occupying forces, pointing to Nazi operations that targeted religious and cultural institutions. Others propose a more complex theory that the gold was hidden by church officials themselves, intended as a safeguard against both the Allies and the Axis. The lack of transparent documentation has only deepened the puzzle. Decades later, investigative commissions have searched archives across Italy, Germany, and even the United States, but the gold's fate remains unresolved. No definitive proof has surfaced, no vault, no shipment logs, no recovered bars. Instead, the missing Vatican gold has become a shadow in history. Lingering between fact and speculation, was it looted, concealed, or quietly absorbed into post-war rebuilding efforts? The truth may lie buried in sealed archives or forgotten testimonies. And until those answers emerge, the story of the missing Vatican gold during World War II remains a haunting reminder that even in the most sacred places, mysteries endure. Prophecy of the Pope Saint Malachi from the heart of medieval Europe comes. A prophecy that has stirred both fascination and unease for centuries. It is known as the Prophecy of the Popes, attributed to a 12th century Irish archbishop named Saint Malachi. According to legend, Malachi experienced a vision during a pilgrimage to Rome. In 1139, what he recorded was not a typical sermon or teaching, but a mysterious list, 112 short Latin mottos, each one said to describe a future pope. These mottos ranged from symbolic references to geographic origins, family crests, or key events that would define a papacy. The prophecy remained hidden for centuries until it was first published in 1595 by a Benedictine historian. From that point forward, scholars, clergy, and skeptics began tracing each line of the list against the succession of popes. Remarkably, many believed the descriptions aligned with striking accuracy. For example, Pope John Paul II was linked to the phrase de labor solis, of the labor of the sun, a reference that some connected to the solar eclipse on the day of his birth. But the prophecy carries an unsettling conclusion. It foretells that after the 112th pope, described as Petrus Romanus, or Peter the Roman, the city of Rome will face great tribulation, and the church itself may confront its final trial. Critics argue that the prophecy is nothing more than a 16th century forgery crafted to lend legitimacy to certain papal candidates of that era. Others note that its accuracy seems to diminish with modern pontiffs, raising doubts about its authenticity. For those who believe, the idea that history has been quietly unfolding along a predetermined path remains deeply compelling. Today, with Pope Francis often cited as the 112th figure on Malachi's list, the world watches with curiosity. Is this the end of the prophecy, or simply the beginning of another chapter we cannot yet understand? The trial records of the Knights Templar, the year is 1307. Across Europe, whispers echo through corridors of power, whispers of wealth, influence, and a secret order that had grown too strong. The Knights Templar, once celebrated as holy warriors and protectors of pilgrims, now stood accused of heresy, betrayal, and unspeakable rights. What followed would become one of the most dramatic trials in medieval history. The trial records of the Knights Templar remain a unique window into this turbulent era. Preserved in fragmented manuscripts and papal archives, they reveal not only the accusations, but also the atmosphere of fear and political ambition that fueled the proceedings. King Philip IV of France, heavily indebted to the Templars, much to gain from their downfall. On October 13, 1307, he ordered the arrest of every Templar within his realm. What began as a dawn raid quickly became a systematic dismantling of the order. The records describe confessions extracted under torture, ranging from the denial of Christ to secret initiation rituals. Yet, contradictions run deep. Some knights confessed, then later recanted, declaring their words were forced under unbearable pain. Others remained steadfast, refusing to admit guilt even as they faced the stake. Perhaps the most significant of these documents is the Chinon parchment, discovered in the Vatican's secret archives in 2001. This record shows that Pope Clement V had absolved the Templars of heresy in private, even as the public trials condemned them. It raises a profound question. Were the knights truly guilty, or were they pawns in a larger struggle between church, crown, and power? The final executions in 1314, including that of Grand Master Jacques de Maule, closed the chapter of the Templars, but the trial records continued to speak. They are fragments of voices silenced by fire and fear, preserved against time, yet never fully answering the doubts they created. Even today, scholars pore over these centuries-old parchments, searching for clarity in the lines of fading ink. But perhaps the greater mystery is not what the records reveal, but what they deliberately leave unsaid. The hidden chronovisor device step into the shadows of history, and you'll find whispers of a device said to peer across time itself. Chronovisor. Allegedly hidden deep within the archives of the Vatican, this mysterious instrument has fascinated historians, scientists, and conspiracy theorists for decades. The story begins in the 1950s with Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk and respected scholar of music and ancient texts. Ernetti claimed to have worked with a secret team of scientists, including Nobel laureate Enrico Fermi and German rocket engineer Werner von Braun. Together, they supposedly developed a machine capable of tuning into the echoes of the past. The chronovisor, according to Ernetti, could capture not only sound, but also moving images from history moments long vanished, yet imprinted on the fabric of the universe. Descriptions of the device portray it as a large cabinet filled with antennas, dials, and cathode ray screens. Ernetti stated that with this technology he had witnessed great events, the crucifixion of Christ, speeches by Roman statesmen, even long-lost theatrical performances from antiquity. His accounts painted a picture of a machine that blurred the line between archaeology and time travel. Yet, skepticism dominates the narrative. Critics argue that no physical evidence of the chronovisor has ever been produced. Some say Ernetti fabricated the story, others suggest he may have been pressured into silence by the Church. Indeed, according to accounts, the Vatican eventually classified the device as one of its most closely guarded secrets, warning that misuse could destabilize society itself. What lingers today is not proof, but possibility. Was the chronovisor a real experiment in quantum resonance, lost to secrecy? Or was it a legend born from imagination, designed to inspire both fear and wonder? The truth remains locked away, whether in forgotten archives or in the minds of those who once claimed to see history unfold on its flickering screen. And so, the chronovisor lives on, suspended between fact and myth, hidden key to time that may never reveal its secrets. The hidden chronovisor device step into the shadows of history, and you'll find whispers of a device said to peer across time itself, the chronovisor. Allegedly hidden deep within the archives of the Vatican, this mysterious instrument has fascinated historians, scientists, and conspiracy theorists for decades. The story begins in the 1950s with Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk and respected scholar of music and ancient texts. Ernetti claimed to have worked with a secret team of scientists, including Nobel laureate Enrico Fermi and German rocket engineer Werner von Braun. Together, they supposedly developed a machine capable of tuning into the echoes of the past. The chronovisor, according to Ernetti, could capture not only sound, but also moving images from history moments long vanished, yet imprinted on the fabric of the universe. Descriptions of the device portray it as a large cabinet filled with antennas, dials, and cathode ray screens. Ernetti stated that with this technology he had witnessed great events, the crucifixion of Christ, speeches by Roman statesmen, even long-lost theatrical performances from antiquity. His accounts painted a picture of a machine that blurred the line between archaeology and time travel. Yet, skepticism dominates the narrative. Critics argue that no physical evidence of the chronovisor has ever been produced. Some say Ernetti fabricated the story, others suggest he may have been pressured into silence by the Church. Indeed, according to accounts, the Vatican eventually classified the device as one of its most closely guarded secrets, warning that misuse could destabilize society itself. What lingers today is not proof, but possibility. Was the chronovisor a real experiment in quantum resonance, lost to secrecy? Or was it a legend born from imagination, designed to inspire both fear and wonder? The truth remains locked away, whether in forgotten archives or in the minds of those who once claimed to see history unfold on its flickering screen. And so, the chronovisor lives on, suspended between fact and myth, hidden key to time that may never reveal its secrets. The disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi was a warm evening in Rome, June 22, 1983, when a 15-year-old girl named Emanuela Orlandi vanished without a trace. She was returning home after a music lesson, carrying her flute, walking through familiar streets. But from that moment forward, history records only silence. Emanuela was the daughter of a Vatican employee, and she lived within the walls of Vatican City. Her disappearance was not just another missing person case. It became one of Italy's most enduring mysteries, drawing in layers of politics, organized crime, and even whispers of international intrigue. In the days following her disappearance, anonymous phone calls offered strange clues. Some voices claimed she had been kidnapped by a criminal group, demanding the release of Mehmet Ali Aka, the man who had attempted to assassinate Pope John Paul II just 2 years earlier. Others suggested she was taken by the mafia as leverage over financial dealings involving the Vatican Bank. Each lead seemed promising, yet each one collapsed into confusion. Over the years, the case grew more tangled. Reports linked her disappearance to the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano, a powerful financial institution entangled with the Vatican. Some investigators suggested she might have been buried in secret locations, even inside Vatican cemeteries. 2019, 2 tombs in the Teutonic Cemetery were opened after anonymous tips, but they were found empty, deepening the sense of unease. For Emanuela's family, decades have passed with no closure. Her brother has become the most persistent voice, demanding truth in a story shadowed by silence and secrecy, and yet the Vatican itself has remained largely guarded, offering statements but few definitive answers. What truly happened to Emanuela Orlandi remains locked behind doors few have ever entered. Was she a victim of chance, a pawn in international schemes, or the bearer of secrets too dangerous to reveal? The question still lingers in Rome's quiet streets. Somewhere, and in layers of history and power, lies the truth of a girl who never came home. The Vatican's role in Nazi Ratlands. The end of World War II marked the fall of the Third Reich. But for many of its leaders, the story did not end in the rubble of Berlin. Hidden within the shadows of post-war Europe lies one of the most debated mysteries of the 20th century. The Vatican's role in the Nazi Ratlands. The term Ratlands refers to secret escape routes that allowed high-ranking Nazis and collaborators to flee Europe, often finding refuge in South America or the Middle East. Argentina, Chile, and even Syria became safe havens. But how did so many manage to vanish under the watch of the Allies? Evidence uncovered by historians points toward networks operating through religious institutions. The Vatican, as a central hub of influence in post-war Europe, possessed both resources and authority that could aid in such escapes. Certain priests and bishops, particularly within the Croatian Catholic clergy, are documented as having assisted fugitives. Passports issued by the International Red Cross, often backed by Vatican recommendations, provided these men with new identities and a chance to disappear. One figure frequently linked to these operations is Bishop Alois Hudel, an Austrian clergyman. In Rome, known for his sympathy toward fascist ideology, Udell openly admitted in later writings that he helped former Nazis evade justice. His justification was framed as an act of Christian charity, protecting those he viewed as persecuted in a new political climate. The extent of the Vatican's official involvement, however, remains uncertain. While individual clergy members are undeniably connected, the question of whether the highest levels of the Church sanctioned or even knew of these networks remains unresolved. Some historians argue it was a matter of quiet policy, while others see it as the actions of rogue individuals acting under the cover of faith. In the archives of the Vatican, countless documents remain sealed, leaving only fragments for researchers to piece together. Each uncovered passport, each testimony, and each hidden trail of correspondence adds another layer to the mystery. Did the Vatican turn a blind eye? Or did it play a decisive role in shaping the fate of Nazi fugitives? The answer may lie buried in the silent corridors of its archives, waiting for history to reveal it. The Galileo affair files in the early 17th century. A conflict unfolded that would forever alter the relationship between science, religion, and power. At its center stood Galileo Galilei, astronomer, whose discoveries dared to challenge centuries of established belief. Through his telescope, Galileo observed moons orbiting Jupiter, imperfections on the surface of the Sun, and phases of Venus that could not be explained by Earth-centered models. These findings supported the heliocentric theory first proposed by Copernicus, that the Earth revolves around the Sun. For Galileo, the evidence was undeniable. But for the Church, it was dangerous. At that time, the Catholic Church held immense authority over intellectual and spiritual life in Europe. The geocentric model was not just a scientific position, but a theological foundation. To challenge it was to risk more than scholarly debate. It was to confront the guardians of faith itself. In 1616, church officials declared heliocentrism formally heretical. Galileo was warned not to teach or defend it, yet years later, he published his dialogue concerning the two chief world systems. Written in the form of a conversation, it appeared to favor heliocentrism while presenting geocentrism as weak and outdated. The work attracted attention and scrutiny. By 1633, Galileo stood before the Inquisition in Rome. Facing the threat of torture, he recanted his views. Officially, he was guilty of vehement suspicion of heresy. Unofficially, he was silenced. For the rest of his life, he lived under house arrest, continuing his studies in secrecy. But the story did not end there.
Centuries later,
The Vatican revisited the case. In 1992, over 350 years after the trial, Pope John Paul II formally acknowledged the errors committed against Galileo. The Galileo affair files were reopened, not just as a matter of history, but as a reminder of the tension between belief and evidence. Even today, the case remains a symbol. It raises a question that echoes across time. When knowledge challenges tradition, which one will prevail and at what cost? The index of forbidden books. For centuries, knowledge has been a source of both enlightenment and fear. Hidden deep within the archives of the Vatican lies a list that embodies this tension: the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, or the Index of Forbidden Books. First introduced in 1559 by the Roman Catholic Church, this catalog was no ordinary reading list. It was an official register of works deemed dangerous to faith or morals, containing titles that questioned doctrine, challenged authority, or promoted what the Church called heresy. Over the years, names on the index ranged from philosophers and scientists to novelists and political thinkers. Works by Galileo Galilei, Jean-Paul Sartre, and even novels by Victor Hugo once stood side by side under the shadow of prohibition. The purpose of the index was clear: to control the spread of ideas that could undermine religious authority. Priests, bishops, and appointed censors reviewed new writings, deciding whether they threatened the unity of the Church. But the paradox was undeniable. The very act of banning these books often fueled curiosity, making them more sought after than before. For more than 4 centuries, the index shaped the intellectual landscape of Europe. Writers struggled with censorship, while readers faced penalties for seeking out restricted texts. Yet knowledge, as history shows, has a way of finding its audience. By the mid-20th century, the world had shifted. Scientific discovery, global conflict, and cultural change made the index increasingly out of step with modern life. In 1966, the Church officially abolished it, declaring it no longer binding under penalty of sin. Still, the legacy remains. Index of Forbidden Books stands as a reminder of the fragile balance between faith and freedom, order and inquiry. What once was hidden in the shadows is now openly studied. But the deeper question lingers. How many ideas throughout history were silenced before they could ever be heard? The Vatican and the Turin Shroud. The Vatican has always stood as a symbol of faith, tradition, and secrecy. Among its most closely guarded mysteries lies a relic that continues to divide historians, scientists, and believers alike. The Turin Shroud. This ancient piece of linen, measuring over 14 feet long, bears the faint image of a man. The markings resemble wounds of crucifixion, leading many to believe it could be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ himself. The shroud's history, however, is far from straightforward. Its earliest documented appearance dates back to the 14th century in France, but many argue its origins stretch much further in 1988. Radiocarbon testing dated the cloth to the medieval period, between 1260 and 1390, seemingly discrediting its authenticity. Yet questions soon arose. Critics of the study pointed to possible contamination, fire damage, and centuries of handling that may have distorted the results. Later analyses using newer technology suggested that parts of the cloth may indeed be older, adding another layer of uncertainty. Beyond science, the shroud carries immense symbolic weight. For centuries, it has drawn pilgrims and scholars each, seeking answers hidden within its faint and almost ghostly image. The Vatican, while acknowledging its profound religious significance, has remained careful never to officially declare it the true burial shroud of Christ. Instead, it is presented as an object of devotion, leaving the question of authenticity to linger unresolved, even today. Modern imaging techniques reveal details invisible to the naked eye, intensifying debates rather than settling them. But to some, it is a divine relic. To others, an extraordinary medieval creation. What remains undeniable is its power to inspire awe and provoke inquiry. The Turin Shroud rests in Turin's Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, guarded and rarely displayed. And as long as it remains, suspended between faith and science, it continues to whisper a timeless question: what truth lies woven into its ancient threads? The hidden exorcism records in the quiet archives of the Vatican. There are documents said to detail centuries of encounters with forces beyond human understanding. They are known as the hidden exorcism records, files that rarely see the light of day. Exorcism, the ritual of driving out what is believed to be a demonic presence, has been practiced within the Catholic Church for hundreds of years. Officially, it is treated with extreme caution. Cases are investigated, witnesses are questioned, and only when no natural explanation can be found does the Church approve the rite. Yet, behind these formal processes, there exists a vast body of reports, written testimonies of priests, doctors, and even victims stored away, sealed from public view. Some accounts describe individuals speaking in languages they had never learned, voices that seemed to come from nowhere, and physical changes that defied medical explanation. Others speak of days-long struggles where priests, armed only with prayer, confronted what they believed were forces determined to break the human spirit. While many of these cases remain classified, fragments have surfaced through interviews and rare leaks, offering glimpses into events that blur the line between psychology and the supernatural. Historians and researchers who have studied these hidden records suggest they reveal more than just isolated incidents. They form a timeline, stretching back centuries of humanity's ongoing battle with the unexplained. Whether these accounts are evidence of spiritual warfare or reflections of cultural and psychological conditions remains a subject of debate. Even today, the Vatican trains a small number of priests as exorcists, quiet acknowledgement that the practice has not disappeared. But the most intriguing details, the patterns. The similarities across continents and centuries remain locked away in guarded files. Perhaps, hidden in those sealed records, lies an answer waiting to be uncovered, or perhaps they will remain forever in the shadows, reminders of mysteries the world is not yet ready to face. The sealed archives on Pius XII and the Holocaust. The story begins behind locked doors. In one of the most guarded repositories on Earth, the Vatican's Apostolic Archives. For decades, historians and scholars have sought access to one collection in particular, the sealed files of Pope Pius XII. The man who guided the Catholic Church during the Second World War and the Holocaust, Pius XII, born Eugenio Pacelli, became Pope in 1939, just months before the outbreak of global conflict. His papacy coincided with some of the darkest years of human history. While millions of Jews were persecuted and murdered, questions arose about how the Vatican responded and how much the Pope himself knew. Some argue that Pius XII worked quietly, using diplomacy and secrecy to protect Jews and others targeted by the Nazis. Reports suggest that monasteries and convents across Europe hid refugees, often with the Church's blessing. Yet critics claim the Pope's silence in the face of genocide was deafening, raising the question, was he cautious for diplomacy's sake or complicit through inaction? The archives, sealed for more than 70 years, contained correspondence, personal notes, and official records from Pius XII's papacy. For historians, they represent the missing key that could clarify whether the Vatican stood as a silent bystander, a discreet protector, or something in between. In 2020, after persistent calls for transparency, Pope Francis authorized limited access to these files. Scholars rushed to Rome, combing through thousands of documents, but the full picture remains incomplete. Each new finding sparks both answers and fresh uncertainty. Letters hint at Vatican awareness of deportations. Other papers suggest diplomatic pressures and fears of retaliation against Catholics under Nazi control. Yet the archives remain vast, with years of research still ahead. Perhaps one day the sealed words of Pius XII will reveal whether he was a man constrained by politics, or a figure acting with hidden courage and silence.
Until then,
the heavy doors of the Vatican archives continue to guard their secrets, leaving us to wonder what truths still lie buried within. The letter of the Virgin Mary to Pope John XXIIIN, the archives of the Vatican. Among countless documents preserved for centuries, lies mention of a letter said to be extraordinary in nature, the letter of the Virgin Mary to Pope John XXIII. The story begins in 1960, when Pope John XXIII reportedly received a sealed envelope delivered under unusual circumstances. Accounts suggest that this letter was not written in modern times, but was instead a mysterious message attributed to the Virgin Mary herself. According to some, its origins trace back to Marian apparitions, moments where believers claim the Virgin appeared to deliver warnings or guidance, though the details remain uncertain. Whispers say the letter contained apocalyptic visions, prophecies of global conflict, and a call for humanity to return to faith before catastrophe struck. What makes the mystery deeper is that the Pope, after reading it, allegedly chose not to reveal its contents to the public. Instead, he placed it within the guarded vaults of the Vatican. Declaring that mankind was not yet ready for its message, historians and researchers who have attempted to trace the document find themselves at a dead end. The Vatican archives remain closed, and only a select few are believed to have seen the letter with their own eyes. Some claim that it may be tied to the famous Third Secret of Fatima, another Marian prophecy long kept hidden from the world. Others argue it is a separate, entirely unique revelation. To this day, no clear evidence has surfaced to confirm the letter's authenticity, yet the idea of it continues to stir speculation. Was it a genuine divine message, suppressed to protect humanity from fear? Or was it a story woven over time, blending faith, secrecy, and imagination into legend? The truth remains locked away somewhere deep in the halls of the Vatican. Until that envelope, if it exists, is open for the world to see. The letter of the Virgin Mary to Pope John XXIII will remain one of the most haunting mysteries of the modern Church. The missing Vatican library. Manuscripts steeped within the walls. Of Vatican City lies a library, unlike any other, a vast archive of human history, religion, and knowledge. For centuries, the Vatican Apostolic Library has been a silent guardian of manuscripts so rare and fragile that only a select few have ever laid eyes upon them. But among these priceless treasures, there are volumes that have vanished manuscripts, once cataloged, now unaccounted for. The Vatican Library officially dates back to the 15th century under Pope Nicholas V, though its collections reach much further into the past. Containing over 80,000 manuscripts and more than 1 million books, preserves everything from early biblical texts to writings by ancient philosophers and medieval scholars. Yet, records throughout history speak of missing works documents, referenced in inventories but never found again. Scholars have long debated what these missing manuscripts might contain. Some believe they hold early Christian writings, perhaps even alternative gospels excluded from the biblical canon. Others suggest scientific treatises from antiquity, possibly preserving knowledge lost during Europe's so-called Dark Ages. There are even whispers of forbidden text works deemed too dangerous, controversial, or heretical to remain accessible. What makes the mystery more intriguing is the secrecy of the library itself. Access is highly restricted. Only accredited researchers may enter, and even they are granted permission to view specific works under strict supervision. This has fueled speculation. Were these manuscripts truly lost, misplaced over centuries of cataloging, or deliberately hidden away? Occasional discoveries suggest that forgotten treasures still surface. In recent decades, scholars uncovered texts thought to be lost forever, quietly resting in overlooked corners of the collection. Each find raises the question, how many more remain buried, and what truths might they reveal? The missing manuscripts of the Vatican Library remain more than a historical puzzle. They are a reminder of how much of humanity's story lies just out of reach. Somewhere, behind locked shelves or hidden archives, fragments of lost knowledge may still be waiting. Unseen, unread, and unanswered. The Pope Joan legend. Imagine a story so extraordinary, it challenges one of the oldest institutions in history. The legend of Pope Joan is one such tale of mystery that continues to stir debate even centuries later, according to medieval chronicles. Pope Joan was a woman who disguised herself as a man, rising through the ranks of the church until she was elected pope in the 9th century. Known for her intelligence, eloquence, and knowledge of theology, Joan was said to have outshone her peers, earning admiration and reverence. Yet she carried a secret that no one suspected. The legend tells us that her true identity was revealed. In dramatic fashion, accounts claim she gave birth during a procession, exposing her hidden life before stunned onlookers. The aftermath, according to some versions, was swift and brutal. Joan is said to have either died on the spot or been removed from history by force. To prevent such an incident from happening again, later traditions suggest the church even introduced a peculiar ritual where newly elected popes would sit on a special chair with an opening, ensuring their gender was confirmed. But was Pope Joan real, or simply a story shaped by rumor, satire, and political tension? Historians point to inconsistencies in the records. Some argue the tale was invented by critics of the church to discredit its authority. Others suggest fragments of truth might lie within perhaps a conflation of real figures, or a suppressed episode lost to time. Despite centuries of investigation, the mystery remains unsolved.
No definitive evidence has ever confirmed Joan's existence, yet her story endures in literature, art, and folklore. Whether she was a historical figure erased from the record or a legend born from imagination, Pope Joan continues to remind us how fragile the boundary between fact and myth can be. And somewhere between the pages of history and legend, her shadow still lingers. The supposed alien files in the Vatican Observatory high above the hills of Castel Gandolfo, just outside Rome, stands a place not often associated with secrecy: the Vatican Observatory. For centuries, this institution has been the center of astronomical research sponsored by the Catholic Church. But some claim that hidden within its walls lie files suggesting something far more extraordinary: encounters with beings not of this earth. The Vatican Observatory, established officially in 1891, holds one of the most advanced astronomical libraries in Europe. Its telescopes, once positioned in the gardens of the papal residence, are now housed in modern facilities in Arizona, where clearer skies allow for deeper observation. Publicly, the research focuses on galaxies, meteorites, and the birth of stars. Yet whispers persist that beyond the official studies, there are archives locked away, records of phenomena that cannot be explained by traditional science. Stories often circle back to the observatory's Jesuit astronomers. Some of them have spoken openly about the possibility of extraterrestrial life, suggesting that belief in God and the existence of aliens are not mutually exclusive. Their statements, while speculative, have fueled curiosity. Could the Vatican, one of the oldest institutions in the world, possess knowledge of extraterrestrial contact that remains hidden from the public eye? Adding to the mystery is the observatory's global collaboration with scientific institutions. Why would the Vatican invest so heavily in space research while maintaining strict privacy about many of its internal findings? Some researchers suspect the existence of sealed manuscripts, reports of unexplained aerial phenomena, and correspondence that ties directly into the modern conversation about UFOs. Whether these claims are grounded in fact or merely speculation remains unresolved. No files have been released, no evidence officially acknowledged. Yet the very combination of religion, science, and secrecy keeps the idea alive. As night falls, over Castel Gandolfo, the observatory's telescopes turn silently toward the stars. Perhaps they are searching for answers we are not yet meant to receive, or perhaps the answers are already stored, hidden deep within Vatican walls, waiting for a time when humanity is ready to know. The Secret Pact of 1929, Lateran Treaty, in the heart of Rome, 1929 marked a turning point that would quietly reshape history. Behind closed doors, representatives of two powerful institutions, the Kingdom of Italy and the Holy See, sat across from one another. What emerged from their negotiation was not just a political agreement, but a pact shrouded in layers of secrecy and lasting consequence: the Lateran Treaty. For nearly 60 years before this moment, the relationship between the Vatican and the Italian state had been defined by conflict. Since the unification of Italy in 1870, popes had declared themselves prisoners in the Vatican, refusing to recognize the authority of the Italian crown over Rome. Yet by the late 1920s, the tides of history demanded resolution. Benito Mussolini, Italy's authoritarian leader, saw the Church as both a challenge and an opportunity. The Vatican, in turn, sought protection, recognition, and independence in a turbulent modern world. The Lateran Treaty, signed on February 11, 1929, granted the Vatican City-State full sovereignty, making it the smallest independent nation in the world. In exchange, the Church formally recognized the Kingdom of Italy, settling one of Europe's most enduring disputes. The pact included financial agreements, compensations for lost papal lands, and guarantees of Catholicism's privileged status in Italy. But what truly captures the imagination is not only the treaty itself, but what it represented. For some, it was a pragmatic solution. For others, a secret alignment between spiritual authority and political power. In Mussolini's Italy, the treaty brought him the Church's implicit support, lending legitimacy to his regime. For the Vatican, it secured survival in a century of wars, revolutions, and shifting ideologies. Nearly a century later, the Lateran Treaty still raises questions. Was it simply a necessary compromise, or did it open the door to a deeper, more hidden understanding between church and state? Perhaps the true secret of 1929 lies not in the signatures on parchment, but in the long shadow the pact continues to cast. The Vatican's involvement in Banco Ambrosiano scandal. The name Banco Ambrosiano may sound like just another financial institution in Italy's long history of banking, but its collapse in the early 1980s revealed a web of intrigue that stretched far beyond economics. At the heart of this scandal stood whispers of hidden Vatican involvement, raising questions that remain unresolved to this day. Banco Ambrosiano, once one of Italy's most powerful private banks, was closely tied to Roberto Calvi, a banker known as God's banker for his connections to the Vatican. Through a complex network of offshore companies and secret transactions, Calvi moved millions of dollars, much of it linked to the Vatican Bank, formerly known as the Istituto per le Opere di Religione. The bank, created to manage church funds, suddenly appeared in the spotlight, accused of being a silent partner in financial operations that blurred the line between charity and corruption. In 1982, the bank collapsed under billions in debt, shaking Italy's financial world. Just days later, Calvi's body was found hanging beneath London's Blackfriars Bridge. Initially labeled a suicide, later investigations pointed to murder, with theories ranging from mafia involvement to political conspiracies, and always circling back to the Vatican's shadowy role. Documents revealed that the Vatican Bank had provided letters of support for Ambrosiano's international dealings. Yet when the crisis unfolded, the Vatican distanced itself, claiming only minor involvement. Nonetheless, settlements were quietly made, suggesting a deeper awareness than officials admitted. The scandal exposed not only financial mismanagement, but also the dangerous intersection of religion, politics, and power. Why would the Vatican, an institution devoted to faith, risk entanglement in such dealings? Was it a matter of influence, of protecting secret funds, or of forces within the church acting beyond official oversight? Even today, the Banco Ambrosiano scandal remains more than a financial collapse. It is a reminder of how institutions built on trust can harbor secrets far larger than the public ever imagines. And somewhere within the guarded walls of the Vatican, the unanswered questions still echo, waiting for a truth that may never be fully revealed. The sealed documents of the Inquisition, hidden deep within the archives of the Vatican, lies a collection of documents rarely seen by the outside world. Known as the sealed records of the Inquisition, these papers carry centuries of history, bound in secrecy and silence. The Inquisition, established in the Middle Ages, was a powerful institution tasked with protecting the faith and confronting heresy. Over hundreds of years, it gathered testimonies, confessions, and trial records from across Europe and beyond. Yet much of what it recorded remains locked away, sealed under strict restriction. Historians who have caught glimpses describe rows of parchment and manuscripts that trace the fate of individuals accused of heretical thought, forbidden science, or acts considered a threat to the authority of the Church. Some documents reportedly contain correspondences with monarchs and scholars, detailing how politics and religion often intersected in the darkest ways. Others are said to hold records of banned texts, entire works of philosophy and science condemned to remain hidden from society. The sheer volume is staggering, millions of pages cataloged but rarely opened, with many sections completely closed to researchers. Why does so much remain sealed? Some suggest the Church continues to protect sensitive material that could reshape our understanding of history. Others argue it is simply a matter of preservation, guarding fragile records from damage. Yet the aura of mystery lingers, heightened by the very act of keeping them locked away. Every so often, limited portions are declassified, offering brief windows into a complex past. But for every revealed page, countless others remain in darkness waiting. Are they silent witnesses of forgotten trials, or do they contain revelations that could alter how we view centuries of belief, power, and knowledge? The sealed documents of the Inquisition remind us that history is never fully complete. Behind locked doors and guarded shelves, the past continues to whisper, just beyond our reach. The hidden writings of Leonardo da Vinci in the quiet corners of history. Few names stand as tall as Leonardo da Vinci. Celebrated as a painter, inventor, and visionary, Leonardo's legacy is not only visible in his masterpieces but also concealed in the intricate web of his writings. What he left behind continues to puzzle scholars to this day. Leonardo filled thousands of pages with sketches, observations, and ideas that ranged from anatomy and mechanics to astronomy and philosophy. But what sets these writings apart is not just their content, it's their secrecy. He often wrote in mirror script from right to left, a style that requires a mirror to read. Some believe this was a way to guard his discoveries from prying eyes. Others suggest it was simply more natural for a left-handed man like him. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. His thoughts were hidden in plain sight. Among these writings are glimpses of inventions centuries ahead of their time, flying machines with wings like birds, intricate designs for armored vehicles, even concepts that resemble modern-day diving suits and robotics. Yet many of his notes remain incomplete, as though fragments of a grand vision scattered across notebooks. The Codex Leicester, one of his most famous manuscripts, offers insights into his study of water and the cosmos. Other codices reveal meticulous anatomical drawings, capturing details that would not be confirmed by science until generations later. Still, much of what Leonardo wrote remains difficult to decipher. Layers of diagrams, symbols, and cryptic notes that resist full interpretation. Were these writings personal experiments? Or did Leonardo deliberately conceal knowledge that he felt the world was not ready to understand? The answer remains elusive. Even today, as historians and scientists work to piece together his manuscripts, Leonardo da Vinci's hidden writings continue to hold a mirror to the mind of a man centuries ahead of his time. Perhaps within those pages still lie discoveries the world has yet to recognize, secrets waiting for the right eyes to unlock them. The Vatican and the Ark of the Covenant. For centuries, one of the greatest mysteries of faith and history has remained unresolved. The fate of the Ark of the Covenant. This sacred chest, described in the Hebrew Bible, was said to contain the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, an object of immense spiritual and symbolic power. Its trail vanishes from recorded history over 2,000 years ago, leaving behind only speculation and fragments of legend. The Vatican, the heart of the Catholic Church, has often found itself drawn into this mystery. Deep within its walls lies the Vatican's secret archives, an enormous collection of documents spanning centuries. Some believe hidden among them are clues to the Ark's location, perhaps even evidence that the Church has safeguarded it for generations. Though no proof has ever been revealed, the idea persists, fueled by the Vatican's reputation for secrecy and its possession of countless ancient artifacts. Scholars and explorers have long debated possible paths the Ark may have taken. Some theories suggest it was hidden in Jerusalem before the Babylonian conquest. Others point to Ethiopia, where the Church of St. Mary of Zion claims to house the Ark to this day. But a quieter, more elusive theory insists that the Ark found its way into the hands of the early Church and eventually to Rome, concealed in the very heart of Catholic power. Archaeologists remain cautious, stressing the absence of definitive evidence. Yet the symbolism of the Ark, divine authority, covenant, and mystery, ensures its story will never fade. The Vatican, whether by choice or necessity, continues its silence on the matter, neither confirming nor denying the possibility. And so the question lingers: does the Ark of the Covenant rest beneath centuries of stone and secrecy in Vatican City, or has it been lost forever to history? Until new discoveries emerge, the Ark remains a powerful enigma, one that invites us to wonder what truths still lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered. The lost books of the Bible. Hidden in the Vatican, in the heart of Vatican City, lies one of the most closely guarded archives in the world. Behind heavy doors, beneath layers of security, and within vast underground vaults, rests a collection of documents that few have ever seen. Among these are said to be writings that never made it into the Bible, texts that could alter the way we understand faith, history, and human belief. Throughout history, the Bible has been shaped and refined by councils, translators, and religious authorities. Yet early Christian communities produced far more writings than those that were officially included. The Gospel of Thomas, the Book of Enoch, the Acts of Peter. These and many more works once circulated among believers, offering alternative visions of faith and doctrine. Over time, many of them were declared unorthodox, removed from canon, and quietly set aside. Whispers suggest that the Vatican's secret archives preserve countless such manuscripts. Handwritten pages in Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and even languages now forgotten may still rest there, untouched for centuries. Some scholars argue these books could contain insights into early Christian practices, the life of Jesus, or even stories erased from official history. Others believe they might reveal contradictions, narratives that challenge the very structure of modern theology. Access to these archives is strictly limited. Only a handful of researchers, carefully chosen and approved, are permitted to enter. And even then, only a fraction of the material can be requested at a time. What lies beyond those restricted shelves remains unknown, protected not just by walls but by centuries of silence. For many, the idea that sacred texts could remain hidden is both fascinating and troubling. Could the missing pages of history still be waiting in the shadows, locked away beneath Vatican stone? Or is the mystery itself part of a larger story, one that may never be fully revealed? The secrets of the catacombs beneath the Vatican. Beneath the bustling heart of Vatican City lies a hidden world few have ever seen, a labyrinth of ancient passageways, tombs, and chambers, known simply as the Vatican Catacombs, rests in silence beneath the world's most visited holy ground. The origins of these catacombs stretch back nearly 2,000 years. Long before St. Peter's Basilica rose into the skyline, early Christians carved secret burial sites deep into the earth. Narrow corridors lead past stone-lined graves, their walls once painted with symbolic frescoes, anchors, fish, and doves that spoke of faith and eternal life. Here, beneath layers of history, lie the remains of martyrs, bishops, and perhaps even popes from the earliest centuries of Christianity. Archaeologists who have studied these hidden chambers describe them as a time capsule. Fragments of pottery, inscriptions in Latin and Greek, and faded murals reveal not only how the faithful lived, but also how they honored their dead in secrecy, away from the eyes of Roman persecution. And yet, even after centuries of excavation, much remains unexplored. Beneath the altar of St. Peter's Basilica itself, excavations uncovered what is believed to be the tomb of St. Peter, one of Christ's apostles and the first pope. Fragments of bones wrapped in precious cloth and placed within a simple niche have been identified by many scholars as his remains. For the faithful, it is a place of profound reverence. For historians, it is a discovery that links the foundations of Christianity to the very soil beneath the Vatican. But beyond these sacred finds, the catacombs hold unanswered questions. Entire passages remain sealed, their contents unknown. Some whisper of hidden archives, relics untouched for centuries, or chambers deliberately closed off by the Church. Whether these stories are rooted in fact or imagination, the truth lies in silence, locked away beneath marble floors and gilded ceilings. The Vatican catacombs remind us that history is not always written on the surface. Sometimes its secrets lie buried in the shadows, waiting for the day they will be brought back into the light. The Vatican and the Lucifer telescope high in the mountains of Arizona, far from the ancient walls of Rome, a telescope peers into the vastness of the night sky. But what makes this story intriguing is not just its location, but its connection to the Vatican, and a name that continues to spark curiosity: Lucifer. The observatory in question is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, established in 1993 on Mount Graham. It was built as part of the Vatican's long-standing interest in astronomy, a tradition stretching back centuries when the Church supported celestial studies to better understand creation itself. Yet what drew attention was one of the instruments once associated with this site, a powerful infrared camera system that bore the acronym LUCIFEIRR. Despite its unsettling name, the device was not the Vatican's own, but rather a project developed by a consortium of German universities. The name itself was a technical acronym: Large Binocular Telescope Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. To scientists, it was simply a tool, designed to peer deeper into the cosmos than ever before, capturing light invisible to the human eye. But to the public, the name carried an entirely different weight. The idea that the Vatican, an institution so closely tied to spiritual matters, might be linked to a project bearing the name of the fallen angel fueled speculation. Questions arose. Was there something symbolic hidden in plain sight? Or was it a case of science and language colliding in a way that stirred the imagination? Today, the instrument has since been renamed, stripped of its controversial title. Yet, the story lingers. In the interplay between science, religion, and mystery, the telescope on Mount Graham continues to inspire curiosity, not just about the universe above, but about the choices we make in naming the tools we use to explore. Perhaps in the end, the true mystery is not what the telescope sees in the heavens, but the shadows cast here on earth by a single word. The mysterious death of Pope John Paul II in the quiet halls of the Vatican, a mystery has lingered for decades, one that begins with the sudden and unexpected death of Pope John Paul Urbino. Luciani, known as John Paul I, was elected in August 1978, bringing with him an image of humility and warmth. His papacy was meant to mark a new era of openness and compassion in the Catholic Church, but only 33 days later, he was found dead, in his bed, sparking questions that remain unanswered to this day. Official reports stated that he died of a heart attack, yet contradictions quickly surfaced. No autopsy was ever performed, and details surrounding his discovery varied. Some accounts claimed he was found sitting up with reading materials in his hands, others that he was lying peacefully in bed. Even the time of death was uncertain. Whispers began to spread. John Paul I had shown concern over financial scandals within the Vatican Bank and had spoken of reforming key positions in the Curia. His sudden death so soon after these discussions fueled speculation that powerful forces might have had reasons to silence him. Over the years, journalists, historians, and investigators have examined the case. Some point to inconsistencies in statements by Vatican officials, while others argue that his fragile health made a natural death entirely plausible. The absence of clear medical evidence left space for theories to thrive. Was John Paul I a victim of circumstance, his heart succumbing to stress and exhaustion, or did his vision for reform place him in the path of danger? The truth remains elusive, hidden behind the walls of the Vatican, where silence often speaks louder than words. And so the mystery endures. Was Pope John Paul I's death a tragic twist of fate, or a secret never meant to be revealed? The hidden prophecies of La Salette High in the French Alps, in a small village called La Salette, a mystery took root in the year 1846, one that still stirs debate more than a century later. It was here that two young shepherd children, Mélanie Calvat and Maximin Giraud, reported a vision of the Virgin Mary. They described her as radiant yet sorrowful, delivering a message that combined both warning and promise. The core of her words called for repentance and faith, but alongside this public message, something else was said, something secret, destined to remain hidden for decades. Both children, under the instruction of church authorities, wrote down private versions of the prophecy. These writings were sealed and sent to the Pope. Some parts were later revealed, describing famine, social upheaval, and even the decline of faith within the Church itself. But others remained cloaked in secrecy, suppressed or disputed, creating an enduring sense of unease. Over the years, fragments and alleged leaks have surfaced, references to natural disasters, wars, and trials for humanity. Critics dismiss many of these as exaggerations or fabrications. Supporters, however, point to uncanny parallels between the warnings and real-world events that followed. What adds to the mystery is the tension between what was revealed and what was concealed. Why were portions hidden away? Did the Vatican fear misinterpretation, or was the content too unsettling to share with the world? The sanctuary of La Salette became a place of pilgrimage, drawing thousands who sought meaning in the children's vision. Yet the full story remains incomplete. The sealed words of Mélanie and Maximin are fragments of a puzzle that continues to invite speculation. Standing on the windswept slopes of La Salette today, one cannot help but wonder, were these visions a reflection of human fear, shaped by their time, or a genuine glimpse into the future of the world? The truth, still hidden within layers of secrecy, remains just out of reach.